All right, welcome everyone to our second session of the Learning Community Addressing the Caregiving Crisis, How States and Communities Can Better Support Military and Veteran Caregivers. We're really excited to have you all here today to talk about identifying and engaging military and veteran caregivers. I'm Angela Wright. I'm a Senior Project Associate at SAMHSA's Service Members, Veterans, and Their Families Technical Assistance Center. I'm going to serve as your session moderator today. But also just as a person who is really personally invested in this particular issue, as someone who's served in a caregiver role, and really just wanting to bring light to these issues and to figure out ways that we can make the lives of our military and veteran caregivers better. So with that, I would like to just share a quick disclaimer. The views, opinions, and content expressed in this presentation do not necessarily reflect the views, opinions, or policies of SAMHSA or HHS. For our agenda today, we'll do a little bit of housekeeping and we'll go over the learning community objectives for this session. We'll have some time for participant introductions in the chat, and then we will turn things over to our presenter we have with us today, Melissa Como. We'll have some time after her first part of her presentation to do a little bit of facilitated discussion and Q&A. And then we'll have a second part to the presentation and then another round of facilitated discussion and Q&A. And then we'll set some next steps and adjourn by 3:30 p.m. Eastern time. So to help us ensure an inclusive virtual meeting space, I'd like to ask each of you to set your name to how you'd like to be called during this meeting. That will help me as the facilitator to be able to call on you and to be able to understand who's talking as we're kind of having our discussions. If you're able to turn your video on, if you're not able to during the discussions, that's fine too. We'd certainly understand bandwidth issues, and actually just needing a little break from the screen is okay and healthy. Also, please keep your microphone muted unless you are speaking. And then during this meeting, we'll use the raise your hand feature or the chat function to communicate with the group. So I'll be monitoring both of those things. Our objectives for today. All right. So what we want to talk about today is we're going to describe the challenges of self-identification of military and veteran caregivers. We'll discover strategies for better outreach and engagement, and also identify opportunities to empower the caregiver voice. So I'd like to just take a minute here to introduce yourself. If you haven't already in the chat, please go ahead and share your name, your agency, and your state or territory, or your community that you're with. If you're part of a governor's or mayor's challenge team, you could share that as well. If you're not, that's okay too. Welcome to our TA here. All right. Okay, thanks to everyone who's introducing themselves in the chat. It's wonderful. As you're introducing yourself in the chat, I would love to turn things over to our Military and Veteran Affairs Liaison at SAMHSA to say hello to the group. Stacey Owens, you want to say hello?
Thanks, Angela, and hello, everyone. I'm Stacey Owens, Military and Veterans Affairs Liaison here at SAMHSA. I just wanted to take a minute to thank you for joining us for this second call in a series focused on caregivers. It's just always important to take time out and remember that military families as a whole bear the impact of service. And we're so glad that you've joined us today. So glad to have Melissa Como here. I echo Joy's statement in the chat that if you haven't heard Melissa speak before, you're in for a real treat. Also, if you thought that Red Cross was only about donating blood, you're also definitely in for a treat because you'll hear about all the great work that Melissa and her team are doing at the Red Cross for military and veteran caregivers. So thanks again to our speaker and to the TA Center for putting this event together, and for all of you for coming here to hear more about this important topic. And I'll turn it back over to you, Angela. Thanks.
Thank you, Stacey. All right, and now I am going to turn things over to our presenter. We have with us here today, as we said, Melissa Como. She's the Director of the Military Veteran Caregiver Network at the American Red Cross. And I'll ask her to just share a little bit more about herself. I didn't want to take the time to read a long bio, but she's got lots of credentials behind her. So share a little bit about who you are and what you do, Melissa, with us, and we'll jump right in.
Thank you so much, Angela and Stacy. It really is an honor to be with you all on a subject that I also am personally invested in and professionally dedicated to for the rest of my life. So I am Melissa Como. I am the director of the Military and Veteran Caregiver Network at the American Red Cross. I'm also a caregiver myself to a combat wounded Marine and a mother to a hidden helper. So that's sort of the personal side. Professionally, I have served as a fellow for the Elizabeth Dole Foundation. I'm serving on a couple of different advisory boards, working with the Military Family Advisory Network, suicide prevention efforts, Caregiver to Survivor, greater coalitions for the hidden helpers, children caregivers. I wrote a book called Sleeping with the War, which was my poetic take of life after combat, and really have just delved into building caregiver support that I wish was there from the moment I became a caregiver. So with that, I'll just keep going, and honored to be here and share a little bit about, of course, the Military and Veteran Caregiver Network, where our tagline is connection, engagement, knowledge, skills, and hope. And we build all of our metrics around those 5 keywords. Next slide, please. Now, the Military and Veteran Caregiver Network serves caregivers of all eras, all stages of life, all relationships, and across all locations. And when I say all locations, I mean internationally. We actually have quite a few caregivers in Guam, in the Philippines, the UK, Canada, Australia, in addition to every single state in the US, to include Puerto Rico for my Puerto Rico friends. We serve spouses and partners, which I think is one of the more natural associations with caregiving. We serve parents that are caregivers for their adult children, siblings, children over the age of 18 are served in our network, but we do support other areas where we're trying to get better support for those under the age of 18. Other family members, aunts, uncles, cousins, distant relatives even, friends, those who might not be a blood relation, but are a friend who's a caregiver. And also veterans themselves who are caregivers. So veterans are often also caring for their own spouse or their own special needs children or their own aging parents. So we would welcome them in our Red Cross Military and Veteran Caregiver Network. Next slide, please. So if you don't remember anything about what I say about work, that redcross.org/caregivers, again, we're not just about blood and disasters. If you go to redcross.org/caregivers, you'll get access to all of the programs and services I'm talking about, as well as an easy link to join our community if you are a caregiver looking for this type of support. Right from our website, you'll see our caregiver calendar, where we have monthly opportunities for caregivers to engage in peer support, events, webinars, trainings, workshops, wonderful education opportunities like these, and more. And from there, you can plan. Caregivers have limited time, so we try to give them as much notice as possible and make it easy, like a one-click registration for you to get right into any online events that might be of interest to you. We also do highlight our more and more in-person events that are coming as we leave the pandemic behind us. So the caregiver calendar serves as a great resource to caregivers, as well as those who are supporting caregivers, looking for more information about caregivers. There's a little bit of something for everyone there. Next, we have our Hero Care Resource Directory, which has at least, and I believe this number has actually been updated, but at least 800 resources for every zip code in America. So you're never going to refer someone to this resource directory. They're never going to put their zip code in and find that 0 resources available. There is something up to 800 resources for every zip code in America. This isn't true for our international. This one is very stateside, but again, very, very usable for those in the United States. It's searchable by veteran status. It's searchable by different types of wounds, illness, injuries, different disabilities. You can also search by the term caregiver to find resources and support right in your community with the tag caregiver. The data hygiene behind this resource directory is second to none. All of the resources that you do find in there will also have capacity, have funding, be open, be able to take new clients. So very, very helpful on that data hygiene place. So you're never sending someone to a resource from this directory that doesn't have capacity or no longer exists, as sometimes happens. Next slide, please. So we primarily focus on evidence-based peer support programs, and we do train caregiver peer volunteers in 3 roles. One would be to work in that online community, one would be for the one-on-one peer mentor, and the other would be to facilitate peer support groups. Now, we are using 2 evidence-based models. We use Rutgers University Reciprocal Peer Support Model, and the best way to describe this model is that peer support is mutual, meaning when you help someone, you're actually helping yourself. We see a lot of caregivers creating great meaning in some of the challenges that they've gone through by making it easier for those coming behind them. And of course, those coming behind them are benefiting from their knowledge and expertise and experience. So it's a reciprocal model of peer support. The second model that we use is Dr. Alan Wolfelt out of the Center for Life and Loss, or Loss and Life Transitions in Colorado. And the companioning model really emphasizes companionship, walking together. No one is the expert, no one is ahead, no one is behind, but we're coming together to just hold space and share a journey. So those are the 2 evidence-based models we use. Next slide, please. All right, our online peer support community, this really serves as the hub of everything we do at the Military and Veteran Caregiver Network. We use a Salesforce secure technology. So it is a Salesforce community with a secure login for each caregiver. It operates 24/7, 365, because as you know, caregivers need support at a variety of times. No 9-to-5 support here. This is all the time. It's always on. There are always caregivers in there supporting one another. We have peer moderated groups, discussions, topics, and chats. And we've made it very accessible either by computer, your phone, mobile devices. Everything that we do is designed to be as technology easy as possible. We allow you to create a secure online profile, meaning you have a profile picture and your name. I do want to note, though, for our active duty caregivers, this can be somewhat of a challenge, and many aren't comfortable self-identifying as a caregiver or stepping up and getting support with their own identity. So we do allow caregivers to not put up a picture, and they don't have to use their real name. Because we do vet everyone that comes through our network, we know who they are and who they're operating as. But if for their own help-seeking behavior or their search needs or support needs, we don't require them to share a photo or operate under their real name. All of our content is moderated by trained caregiver moderators, and we're mostly searching for appropriate and accurate content. As you know, on other sites, other places, there's a lot of misinformation. There's a lot of disinformation. And we are very, very grateful that many caregivers come to us and say they fact check things they hear in other places with ours, because they know we are going to limit inappropriate, inaccurate content from being spread in our community. And it happens very rarely. These are the only true deletes or flags we have to do in our community, just to ensure that we don't send caregivers down any rabbit holes when it comes to benefits or health information and things like that. We do create an atmosphere of mutual respect and confidentiality. You're going to see that a lot through our programming. And we do train caregiver volunteers in crisis interventions and referrals for caregiver members who are in distress. And of course, that crisis intervention for peers is to get the person in crisis to the professionals. And we do go through a full module of training on crisis for our caregivers to, one, recognize what a crisis might be and what steps might be taken to help in that time. And then, of course, supporting the supporters, because having a volunteer go through something, having another staff member go through that, we really focus on supporting our supporters and making sure they have time to decompress and digest what they've gone through, lessons learned, and how to best support them going forward. Next slide, please. Our peer mentor support program. So this is a traditional peer mentor program, one-on-one mentorship. We do use a leading edge caregiver matching technology, which I affectionately call our caregivermatch.com. It works like a dating site. You're going to put in what you need as a caregiver for support, what's important to you, who you're caring for, where you're located, and a very sophisticated algorithm runs in the background and will present you with at least 3 options of trained peer supporters that closest match your lived experience. So our caregivers match on things like era of service, types of wounds or illness or injury they might be caregiving for, whether or not the caregivers serve themselves. We found that veteran caregivers like to be with other veteran caregivers. Where you're located, whether you live in an urban or rural area, if you have children or not, special needs children, service dogs comes up a lot. And we have a catch-all where people can put in specific words that might be important to their caregiver peer mentor program, and the algorithm does calculate into that. Our caregivers do have the opportunity to meet in the community. Again, it has been a little limited since COVID, but we're getting back into hearing our caregivers are meeting in coffee shops or at parks and things that are convenient and easy for them. We do largely do virtual or phone peer support as well. We have the positive models, again, using the companion where our mentors are sharing lived experience to benefit each other. We do train all of our caregiver mentors, so it is a twofold training for all of our peer support. The first is the core competencies for caregiver peer support, which is a self-paced online course caregivers do to sort of understand our models, understand our history with our organization, as well as peer support. And then we move to a live training where caregivers are able to practice skills related to the role that they've chosen. So if they're going to work in the online community, they get an online community training. If they're going to be a peer mentor, they get training on providing that support one-on-one. And then lastly, in our most popular program, which is our peer groups, they get training how to facilitate peer support in a group environment. Again, that role of peer in crisis and crisis intervention is woven through all of these trainings, just to be sort of an upstream solution for any crisis that might be coming. Next slide, please. Peer support groups. I did say this is our most popular program. It is by far and away our most popular program. Over the pandemic, we actually doubled in size due to our peer groups that were always facilitated online. We did have them in the community as well, but knowing the nature of caregiving, we built all of our programs to have a virtual component for caregivers that are homebound due to their caregiving responsibilities. We also offer these at nights and weekends, times that are not that 9 to 5, to really meet caregivers where they were at times that were convenient to them. They are structured. We have, kind of a user agreement or, a participant agreement. They're confidential, very heavy on confidentiality and respect. We also train many partner organizations. So we host them ourselves, but many of the other organizations that we work with also host peer support groups, again, because they are so popular, using our model and our training. We do welcome caregivers to participate regularly, meaning they come every week, twice a week, as well as those that drop in when caregiving might allow or when they really, really need the support. We do cap it at about 15 caregivers, and that's because that is the best practice kind of therapeutic limit. So again, the need to have many of these each week, serving at least 15 caregivers is really needed. So we're grateful for this program, and I'm so glad that we can support caregivers in this way. Next slide. Who are military and veteran caregivers? So I'm building a little bit on my friend Dr. Roxana Delgado and her last presentation, which really dove into who military and veteran caregivers are. I started by saying that oftentimes people assume it is a spouse, but what we see is it is not always the spouse. In fact, sometimes it's someone not even related to the veteran. So when we say who are military and veteran caregivers, we mean any family member, friend, neighbor, other, anyone who cares for that wounded, ill, or injured service member. We also have veterans themselves that are caregivers. What we see as a barrier to caregivers self-identifying is there is some stigma attached to those caring for someone with a mental health condition. Maybe someone who doesn't go through the regular needs for assistance with like their activities of daily living, but are more on that supervision and protection side. Or if your family roles are blurred. I mean, I know I do this a lot of my caregiving because I like to think I'm a loving and caring wife. We've seen the same thing with parents and brothers. When the family role is blurred, they don't necessarily always want to identify as a caregiver. Now, stigma is also a barrier. And that's because veterans themselves don't always want to admit that they need a caregiver. And this isn't always only true in the veteran space. It can be very hard to admit that you need help at any given time, especially the type of help that caregivers provide. Another thing that we see, especially with veteran caregivers, is they feel that they aren't a caregiver if they don't have a VA disability rating, meaning maybe they don't get their care at the VA for whatever reason, but they don't feel they count as a caregiver because of that VA disability rating. Many veterans are undiagnosed or have inconclusive diagnoses that don't lead them to believe that I have Alzheimer's, therefore I need a caregiver, or I have PTSD, therefore I need a caregiver. So when the diagnosis is unclear, many don't step up to say that someone is a caregiver. And we hear that from the veterans as well as their caregivers. It's just a big challenge to make sure that we are being cohesive in how we approach this, and understanding that many veterans are very proud, and they're not always the first to say, I need help with things. This is the person that helps me. So mitigating that and trying to bring people into the fold, normalizing the language around caregiving, whether you're going to use the word caregiver, we hear carer, we hear family helper, support person, all of this is okay, and it really means the same thing, which is caregiver. Next slide, please. All right, so this comes directly from our Red Cross self-identification tool. So we call it, Are You a Caregiver quiz? And as you read through those questions, I won't read through them for you. What we're trying to do here is help get at what are some of the tasks, what are some of the feelings you might have as a caregiver that might not be so obvious, so that you can find a place where you might be able to self-identify as a caregiver. So that first question is obvious. Do you care for someone? Yes. Is it someone who struggles with stress, emotional issues, anger, or depression? This is to get at some of those mental health challenges, predominantly TBI, PTSD, where you'll see that in our military veteran space quite commonly. Do you contribute to taking them to appointments, managing medicine or medication, arranging any form of healthcare? So that's the time you spend on the phone or on the computer arranging care. These aren't always noticed as caregiving, but transportation to medical appointments certainly is caregiving. Managing someone's medication is caregiving, and all of the arranging that goes into that. If I could add one thing, it would also be the billing and handling benefits. That's another huge component of caregiving in the military and veteran space that not everyone is rising to the level of caregiving. Do you feel responsible because you are the spouse, the son, the daughter, the friend, the sibling? Again, that gets at that family line being blurred. A lot of people do caregiving as a family member, and they don't think it needs to be called something else. And that's very true. It doesn't have to be. But you should know that this is above and beyond being a spouse, a son, a daughter, a friend, or sibling. And when you call out this word, you learn that there is support and that there are services, and that key word is caregiver. So that's what we're trying to teach there. And then the feelings of being alone or isolated, and no one around you seems to do the same thing or seem to understand. This comes directly from the RAND report that indicated that many military and veteran caregivers are feeling that isolation. So we asked that question specifically to get to that feeling, to see if people will identify as caregivers that way. All right, next slide, please. Oh, that went fast.
Sure did. Such great information there, Melissa. The military caregiver veteran network is veteran caregiver network. I'm sorry, is just such an amazing resource for caregivers out there, and just to be able to connect with your peers in that way, especially virtually throughout the pandemic, I'm sure has helped so many people. So I wanted to take some time right now to kind of let's absorb what we just heard, think about it a little bit, and maybe ask some questions if anything kind of popped up for you during Melissa's presentation. One thing that I was kind of wondering as you were talking about the caregiver quiz was kind of like, when is that quiz being taken? Is that something that happens when somebody comes onto your site, or do you administer it? Like, in what scenarios is the quiz used?
So we actually use it as an outreach tool. And we leave it in military treatment facilities. We leave it in VA hospitals. It's at all of our Red Cross facilities. And it's a flyer, sort of, are you a caregiver? Just asking the question. We do have an online version of it inside of our online community, but we've found once people join our community, they already know that they're a caregiver, or at least they've taken some steps to find caregiver support. So what we're trying to do is get that thought, get those questions out where people might be in a hospital setting, or, they're in the medical setting, they're in their community and they're not sure. Maybe they've heard this word before and they've never thought of themselves in this way. So it sits in the community as a tool to help people just really identify with that word caregiver, and then of course lead to greater support for that part of their journey.
Okay, that's really great to know. And I have a copy of the quiz that you shared with me, so I wanted to let everybody on this call know that I'll be sending that out in the follow-up email to this session, so you have access to the flyer quiz and can use and I'm assuming it's okay for others to use and distribute it as they need to, yeah, or as they would like. Yes. All right, so if you wanted to share in your own practice, that would be wonderful. Does anybody have any questions? You can share in the chat, or if you wanted to use the raise your hand feature, we can go off of mute to just ask any questions, or respond to the discussion question that I've put here in the chat. What we're really interested in learning from each other here today is what works. So given the challenges that we've talked about related to self-identification, what approaches to outreach and engagement have you found to be successful in your own work? So if you've had some strategies that you've used that have been helpful, let us know. We want to hear from you. So Andrea in the chat is asking, how can I get some resources to disperse to my clients? So Andrea, do you want to expound on that a little bit? Like what type of resources you're talking about? Are you talking about the flyer or other things as well? You can go off of mute if you're able to. Caregiver resources and flyer. Okay.
So I'm going to jump in here because we have a great tool that we've shared. We talked a little bit about the Hero Care Resource Directory, which is free and open to anyone. At Red Cross, we use it internally for our case management system because of all of its tracking and easy referral processes. The version that you can get from our redcross.org/caregiver, you will just go to our website, you enter in a keyword that you're looking for and a zip code, any zip code, and it will pull up all of the resources right away that will serve that keyword in that zip code. We share it has its own website too, redcross.org/hero care resources, where you can go at any time. It's open to the public. Like I said, it is a heavy case management tool. It is the best resource directory I have found, again, due to the data hygiene behind it, making sure that all of the resources in there are taking new clients, are open, do have funding, and are currently able to take referrals from either the system or yourself. When you go into the Hero Care Resource Directory, you can text people resources, you can send them to them on Facebook, you can email them more information. And of course, they're going to have the phone number and address and things like that. But really, really friendly in getting the resources to the community. Even if you just search caregiver and zip code, you'll be surprised at what's available right in your own community.
Yeah, thanks, Melissa. And Roxana, I see your hand, but I just wanted to address in the chat that Kathy says that she produces the NAMI Kansas Peer Newsletter. She always has a page just for veterans. Can she put the quiz in her newsletter?
Absolutely, please.
Okay. And Andrea would like to put the Hero Network on a flyer.
Okay. Let me see if we have a flyer for our Hero Care Resource Directory. And if so, I'll send it to you, Angela, and that would be open to the group.
Okay,
but
perfect.
the link is public. And again, it's redcross.org/hero care resources.
All right, perfect. Thanks, Melissa. Roxana, what would you like to share?
It's just a brief comment of how important it is, this phase of self-identification. I remember being for 9 months a caregiver when my husband came back, he was medically evacuated. And I through so many clinical settings and with so many providers, and I was never asked, and I didn't know. Like Melissa mentioned, I thought, well, I'm the loving wife, caring for my husband. And it took a friend that her expertise is in caregiving to really bring it up to me and bring that awareness. So for 9 months, I never looked for resources or anything because I just wasn't aware. So this step is, if it's not the most important, is one of the most critical for caregivers to really start getting those resources to them and seeking help. Without identifying as a caregiver, they may be missing on so many different benefits and resources that will really help them to thrive. So I just wanted to make this comment of how critical and how important is this step of self-identification and being proactive as a provider. When I work with providers, I tell them, try to be proactive. And now I love that quiz, because now you can have it in your, if you're a provider, you can have it in your office and put it somewhere so that caregiver can look at it and say, oh yeah, I'm a caregiver. So anyway, just wanted to make that comment of how important this step is.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Roxana. And I have to share, that is the same story for me. I did not know I was a caregiver. I've shared often about, I was a very nice nurse who used that word for me. I was waiting outside for my husband. I think he was getting an MRI. And they came back and they said, oh, are you Stephen's caregiver? And I was like, whoa, no. I'm just his wife. And the lady was very, very kind. And she told me that I was probably both, which was interesting to hear. But that very night, I went home and I searched for that word caregiver. And it really did open up a whole new world of resources and support and understanding for what I was going through. Because at the time, I'd been really focused on what my husband was going through, what his injuries were, what things were going on for him, benefits and things like that. And then I was looking for, spouse support, but I was still active duty at the time. With our family was active duty. And so I was getting things like commissary coupons and, daycare and, how to prepare for the next deployment, which didn't align with my spouse journey at all anymore. So that word caregiver, that sweet nurse who just said, you're probably both, really did change my whole trajectory of support and understanding of what I was going through. Thank you, Roxana.
Yeah, one of the things that you mentioned in your presentation, Melissa, earlier about this approach to outreach and engagement was trying to make sure that you had groups during times that people would actually be available and able to take advantage. So I think that's such an important thing too. It's like, it's difficult when there's opportunities out there, but they're in that kind of short time block of when you're just not available, you can't do it. So having the evening and weekend options, I think, is such a great strategy.
Absolutely. And it's not just the evenings and nights, because some caregivers will tell you, I can't do an evening, I can't do a weekend. I can do like an 8 a.m. or I can do an early morning before everyone wakes up. So it is really finding different times, thinking outside of the 9 to 5 kind of clinical box into what can we do at a variety of times to meet caregiver needs, whatever time they are. We don't have midnight groups yet. We haven't found volunteers and people that are willing to, but I know that they would be popular because there are many caregivers that are up that late after a long day that might benefit from the support. But definitely we are hoping to build that type of level of support and those different times that are really, really important. They're not there yet, but they would be.
Absolutely. Any other thoughts from the group before we move on? Just curious.
Hello, my name's Al Galorn. I'm from Connecticut.
Hi, welcome.
This is very fortuitous because we just hired a full-time case manager who's going to be devoted to women's services, and caregivers is on the top of the list. So being able to hook her up with the Hero Care resources and being able to give her access to that information is going to be a good thing. And it's a very timely presentation for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Al. Yes, anything I can do, we're going to share some contact information at the end too. So if you want to connect her to us, we'd be happy to give her an overview, help her understand how the tools work. And that's for anyone. We really do want to get these out in the community as far and wide as possible, and we will make ourselves available.
Oh, absolutely.
Glad to hear the timing is great for you. That's
Yes, it really is great.
timing is everything. All right. Well, if there aren't any other questions or comments at this stage, we'll have some more time again at the end to be able to reconvene. So if some thoughts bubble up over the course of the next segment of our presentation, you can go ahead and share then. So I'll turn things back over to you, Melissa, to take us through the next segment.
Okay, thank you, Angela. All right, so why so much emphasis on military and veteran caregivers? I get asked that a lot, and so I put this slide together just because I want to call this out. Military and veteran caregivers are on the front lines, and that's a very timely for appropriate military term. They know the veteran. They know the veteran sometimes better than the veteran does, and certainly are more involved in their care on a day-to-day basis than providers. They know the veteran. They are included in care planning, or should be included in care planning. They are included in safety planning. They are trusted oftentimes by providers and other aides, as well as by the veteran themselves. Oftentimes we hear that veterans will only want care from their family caregiver. And now there are challenges with that, but it does speak to the trust and the level of comfort they have with their family caregiver. And invested, and I always say this because I know you could not pay anyone, any amount of money to care about my husband more than I do. I am the most invested in his health and healthy outcomes, and the healthy outcomes for our family. Now you can see, I know everyone here knows about the Hidden Heroes RAND report. I love talking about it, but supporting caregivers leads to better health outcomes for veterans. So if your whole focus is all we want to do is improve veteran health, you can look at caregivers and support veteran caregivers, knowing that that support directly impacts the health of the veteran. And I'd say that a lot because sometimes that's forgotten, that we are all working towards better health outcomes for our veterans, and supporting these caregivers makes that happen. The Elizabeth Dole Foundation has a wonderful campaign for inclusive care, and that program is designed to help providers include caregivers in the care planning, in the safety planning, leaning in and listening to them as a colleague, as a trusted advisor on the care of the veteran. Great work being done there, and it's being implemented at VAs across the country. And you can learn more about that if you search Campaign for Inclusive Care at the Elizabeth Dole Foundation. Now, my note here is, while I always talk about how supporting veterans helps veteran caregivers supports veterans, we cannot sacrifice one population for the other. We do see this sometimes in the suicide prevention space, where there's a lot of emphasis on what caregivers can do or how family members can support in maybe a crisis situation, but not a lot of emphasis on what to do if that caregiver or that family member is in a crisis situation. So it's really important to look at this relationship as a dyad, understanding that there are needs on both sides, and that supporting one can really help support the other. Next slide, please. All right, so I know we've talked about resources, and I'm so glad that that's a lot of interest from this group. It sounds like we have new staff. People are hungry for where to find the resources in their community. So I have talked a lot about our Hero Care Resource Directory, but we aren't the only one. There's also the National Resource Directory, which has a wealth of knowledge as well. It's available online, and what I like most about it is there's a print copy of it. I have one up here, where you can pick up a book and look for resources in your community, look for resources nationally that might be able to support you. It has a little card in the back too, so you can write and get another one the next year. So those printed resource directories are very helpful for people that don't want to be online, or that's not the way that they seek resources. So the National Resource Directory book that comes out each year, really, really helpful for caregivers. And then Patriot Link, which is a program of the Code of Support Foundation. I mention them because, again, the data hygiene, the vetting process, but most importantly, and many of you might know this working in the military or veteran space, a lot of resources are divided by era of service, specifically post 9/11 or pre 9/11. And Patriot Link is by far the only resource directory I know that allows you to search with that one criteria. And it's very, very important. You will find that there are resources that are post 9/11 only. And so it's very, very hard if you send a veteran or caregiver to a resource that they do not qualify for due to the era of service. So if I'm ever unsure of if a resource from our Hero Care Network or the National Resource Directory serves pre or post 9/11, I double check it in Patriot Link before I share. And Patriot Link is also a free resource, and I put the link on here as well. And you see my little note, Angela, I told them to stay tuned for the homework. There really are so many resources available. And I could do a whole presentation on resources, but thinking outside of the box, not every resource is going to necessarily be in the veteran or military space. There are lots of resources in disease-specific spaces, in your community, in your faith community. There's just a different way of looking for resources more holistically that can get caregivers and veterans to the support they need. Not necessarily a veteran resource, but perhaps a community resource that can be equally, if not better, support. Next slide, please. Systems approach. So I'm not a social worker, but I have been told by many of my favorite social workers that this is a social worker way to look at things. And it looks at the systems within a family. So that includes families and caregivers in your programs and services and all of your outreach. It's really, really important to think of children as well. Now, you might think that, oh, this is someone that doesn't probably have young children at home. There are grandchildren, there are adopted children. Children just should be thought of when you're thinking of including veterans, families, caregivers, and survivors. Many caregivers will actually reach out for support for their veteran or their children long before they'll ever reach out for support for themselves. So having an understanding of the system, the family system, the caregiving dyad can really help you get to that caregiver who's looking for support. So sometimes you might notice that it's someone identifying as a spouse reaching out for a resource. Understanding that they might be a caregiver might change how you interact or how you respond to that person, especially if you're seeing them over and over again. Again, I just know caregivers put themselves last on the list as far as resources. So if your programs or services could be offered not just to the veteran, but perhaps to the caregiver, the family, and the children, it's really doing a great service to that whole system. And then another thing we hear all the time from our veterans is they don't want to do things without their family caregiver. So it can be a barrier to having veterans participate in your events, in your education opportunities, if they're, it says veteran only, do not bring your family, no childcare provided. These sorts of things often create barriers for even the veteran wanting to engage in the program. So just, again, that whole systems approach, looking at a family, looking at the way that the veterans, the families, the caregivers, or survivors are presenting can be really, really important in how you address outreach or your programming as a whole. Next slide, please. Okay, so I like to talk about a holistic approach. And again, we've talked a little bit about the day, the time, the location. Other things to think about are parking. Do they have plenty of disabled parking? Do they have a service dog, an area where service dogs can relieve themselves? Weather, is this indoors? Is it outdoors? Have you thought about maybe some temperature control issues that might be happening? Many veterans and caregivers are parents or grandparents or adoptive parents, and providing programming for children at the same time as the event that you might have for the veteran is very helpful. And if not, even just child care can be very, very helpful in benefiting that whole family getting the programs and services. Number one, many times caregivers are not an immediate family member, especially not just a spouse. And they are often left out of services or outreach because they have not been called out as a caregiver. So people will say things like veterans and families. So if someone is caring for their friend or their battle buddy or their neighbor, day to day, in and out, they don't feel invited to that event because you haven't specifically called out the word caregiver. That word caregiver is very, very helpful in being inclusive of those that are not in a family member role. And oftentimes, just sometimes your family is not blood, sometimes it's the family that you pick, but in these events, calling out caregiver is very, very helpful. So that should be included on your flyers, on your website, anywhere you could just interject the word caregiver. It is different than family member, it is different than spouse, and getting that in the outreach material will be very, very helpful. Another thing I like to say, and you'll see this again, acknowledging the contributions of caregivers. I can't tell you how many times, I've been the one carrying all the bags, carrying the baby, getting my husband into something only for me to set him up and then I leave. No one acknowledged what it took for me to get him there. We hear this a lot from caregivers who might be pushing someone in a wheelchair, that no one ever acknowledges them or recognizes their contributions to getting the veteran where they are. So acknowledging the contributions of the caregiver is going to go a long way, whether you thank caregivers, whether you call them out in flyers, whether you include them in programming. That acknowledgement of their contribution and what it takes to have a veteran at your event or in their own day-to-day lives is really, really important. Next slide, please. Empowering the caregiver voice. Oh, I love this topic. So you can see the little bullet points that I have there, but from a diversity, equity, and inclusion place, it's really, really important that we're also noting the LGBTQ plus community. Oftentimes we hear that same-sex couples don't feel included, or that their caregiving, if there is one of those letters involved, doesn't count. So being very mindful of our LGBTQ plus community can go a long way in empowering that voice. Caregivers want to be heard, but oftentimes are just met with resources. So I know we've shared a lot about resources today, but that keynote about just listening is very, very important to actually empowering their voice. Sometimes it is, hey, I am looking for resources. This is what I need. But sometimes that caregiver hasn't had anyone to listen to what they have going on, and they don't know what resources they need. So just creating that sort of safe space for those caregivers to talk without judgment, without, leaping to rescue them or save them with a resource, can provide a lot of comfort for a caregiver. And I do talk about peer or safe spaces, and that includes location as well as online security. So people are concerned about where their data goes, who's seeing these posts, if they share certain information, who has access to it. So providing safe spaces can mean security at location, security online, but also that emotional safety to be able to share their journey in a respectful, in a confidential way that lets them kind of relieve some of the stress that they have going on in their lives. Caregiver peer support, this just cuts straight to support. If you want to know one of the best ways to get more caregivers supported or more veterans supported, veteran to veteran, caregiver to caregiver, spouse to spouse, those types of things just cut through so much of the questions and the get to know yous. Peer support is, my baby. I really do believe in it. I know as a caregiver, I can find other caregivers, even if they don't know they're caregivers or not. And, just getting to that, oh, you too. Oh, no, that's normal. Oh, that happens all the time. Oh, yes, that's frustrating. That sort of level of peer connection. So if your outreach people are in the military or veteran space, if they are caregivers, that really does cut the line to getting people into support much, much sooner. And there again, acknowledging the contributions of the caregiver, thanking them for what they do as a caregiver, acknowledging that you see them and you hear them and their work, their efforts matter for the veteran that they serve and for the communities that they live in. So I like to, again, just stomp the acknowledging the contributions of the caregiver there. Next slide, please. Oh, this is my contact card. So as you can see here, there is our website, that redcross.org/caregivers. We are on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And then that email there, programs.mbcn@redcross.org, goes directly to me and every caregiver on my team. So that is the quickest way to get a response if you need resources, if you'd like a demo of our network, or if we can help with any caregiver challenge that you might be facing. Our team is all made up. All of our staff and volunteers in the Military and Veteran Caregiver Network are caregivers themselves. So we come at it with both a professional and a personal desire to help. And again, connection, engagement, knowledge, skills, and hope. that's what we're all working towards. All right. Next
Thank you.
slide.
Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Melissa. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, just such really good information on how we can create that safe space, and empowering the caregiver voice is just really good stuff. So I appreciate that. Now's the time for questions. Anything burning for you to know? We can either come off of mute or enter that in the chat. I will say that I had a couple of questions in the chat about the recording and the slides. So just so everybody's on the same page, this is recorded and we'll send it out to those who registered for this particular learning community. So you'll be able to view it again, or if those who weren't able to join will be able to view it and see the slides as well. And I'll also be sending that quiz as the flyer handout as well in that follow-up email. So if you don't have any questions, I really want to hear from those who have joined this call, who are participating. What opportunities do you see in your state or community to better support and empower military and veteran caregivers? Big or small, what are you seeing that we could potentially make some movement here for this particular population?
I could answer that.
Kathy, go for it.
I co-facilitate an SMVF connection recovery support group for veterans and family members. So caregivers are welcome to attend that. We are actually one of the only ones. And NAMI right now in Florida has decided to do one as well. So that's a good thing. But we eventually want to have a separate connection support group or a family support group for the family members and the caregivers. But we, of course, like any other group, you have to have trained facilitators. So right now we're just with the veteran group is open to anybody. And we just had it last night. So it's whatever, the second Wednesday of every month. So, and it's on the NAMI Kansas website if anyone's interested, or they can contact me. So
Thanks, Kathy. And Melissa, I remember hearing you say that you sometimes work with partner organizations to help start up peer support groups. Or you're on mute, Melissa.
Told you I do my best work on mute. So we do provide, I know NAMI also has good facilitator training. We provide training as well to other organizations because like you said, Kathy, you do need a trained facilitator. So we do offer training on a regular basis for mentors, for peer group facilitators, for online moderators. And if you ever wanted to send someone, we would be happy to do that. If it's something that you're looking to have, for your NAMI chapter or any work that you're doing, we can also put together training sessions for you all to come in and we could just train your people together. And again, it's not that we just want to get these good models out, get, evidence-based models, facilitators out in the community. But that is a challenge to get people to volunteer, to meet at all of the different times that are convenient. One of the ways or the strategies that we've done, we try to create caregiver-friendly volunteer opportunities. Caregivers have a lot going on as it is. So being very open and understanding and creating easy ways for people to communicate when there's conflicts in their schedule or things like that has gone a long way in us securing our facilitators, year over year. And as well as understanding that sometimes they step away and sometimes they want more education opportunities. So keeping it meaningful for them, we really, really value our peers, above all. So making the experience volunteering, getting trained, having additional education opportunities like these are really, really for our peers.
Yeah, thank you. I will email you. We just really need to, especially in our community, because I'm in Manhattan, Kansas, so we've got Fort Riley right next to us. So
Yep.
we have a large veteran and military community, and it's hard to reach them. So I need some more, and that's my job to be doing that. So I will email you because I need some more help and resources and how to get in the door into Fort Riley and Leavenworth and the other ones.
Yes. Well, thank you
Thank
for
you.
what you're doing in that community. And there is a huge need there. So they're grateful to have you.
Thank you, Kathy. Joy, I see your hand raised.
Yes, so
Hi,
what
Joy.
we've been doing in Maryland, really the last 3 years, is to provide education. So I know Melissa has spoken at one of our conferences before. And so what we've really been doing is trying to start with educating the community, behavioral health providers, mental health providers, community organizations and whatnot on this population, the unique challenges and opportunities for this population. I know last year our caregiver workshop presentation was really focused on youth serving as caregivers for this group, and we're having another workshop on caregivers, to educate providers in March.
Exciting.
Mm-hmm.
Are the workshops that you're doing in person or virtual?
They're virtual. We offer them for free with free CEs.
Nice.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Very good. Well, go Maryland.
But I tell you what, if it's something you want to do, anytime you try to find a speaker, Melissa comes up as like the #1 speaker, and so and Roxana does too. So just know once you have them once, it's going to be hard not to.
You're very kind, Joy. And it was my pleasure. I really do appreciate everything you're doing in Maryland, especially for our youth caregivers. I don't know if I have you connected to the Hidden Helper Coalition. I do. I see you shaking your head. I know we've talked a lot about that. But another great opportunity and a great way to serve children that are in these caregiving roles as well. So talk about hidden. People don't often know that there are children providing these caregiving tasks or caregiving support in their families, and they are equally deserving of programs and services to support their journey.
Anyone else would like to weigh in here? What you're seeing opportunities coming up that could potentially help better support our military and veteran caregivers? And start calling on names.
Can I ask a question, Angela?
Sure, Melissa.
So I know some of you and I know some of the states involved, but if anyone just felt like sharing what they're doing in their community for caregivers or where they see caregivers by proxy of the veterans, that would be really helpful in understanding sort of what you're doing in your own community or what you're seeing in your own community, which would be helpful for me to know just in the work that we do. And Dr. Roxana Delgado is on here as well. To better support your efforts, to better understand and be there as a resource to each other. Don't all come off mute at once.
I'll take a shot.
Thank you, Al.
So we're Connecticut, and our organization is called the Military Support Program. Mm-hmm. And we provide linkages to resources for just about any war, National Guard reserves, veterans, and caregivers, spouses, children. So we kept on coming up with a dearth of resources for caregivers. And not only that, but it didn't seem to be an overall cross-agency collaboration going on. So fortunately, our state decided that they were going to give us a new staff person that was going to focus on women, spouses, caregivers issues. And this is like the third week.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to have a yellow ribbon program February and February 25th, where a lot of the providers, Red Cross is going to be there and all, and our two case managers are going to be there. I'm going to try to share this video with the two case managers. The intent would be because one of them has a lot of skills organizing and coordinating things, developing databases of resources, coordinating. And I'd like her to see this video and see, this is the first time I've seen Hero Care
Mm-hmm.
as a pocket resource. And I'm big on carrying around the apps that could quickly you could access things. So my intent is to share this information with her and say, what can you do about coordinating things or making an effort to coordinate things? And that would be the best thing I could think of, using part of her time to do. Because that's where the hole is, caregivers.
Yes. Well, thank you, Al. That sounds great. I'm so grateful that your state has invested in that staff and looking at women and caregivers. I love also that you mentioned guard and reserve. So I did not previously mention that, but it is important to call it out because there again is another group that often chooses not to engage with veteran services or caregiver services, even if it's related to military or veteran. So again, being inclusive in your language and making sure you're calling out guard and reserve as well, it really does help people know that your programs and services are designed for them. I think yeah.
I want to add the one thing that's unique about Connecticut is they fund licensed clinicians to be embedded into all the guard units to be a front line. So there's a licensed clinician that can do case finding, crisis intervention, in addition to the behavioral health team, which has been beefed up in Connecticut. And they do have a pretty active family program, but it's not really, once again, caregivers can kind of get left out, and hopefully we can correct that this year.
Definitely. And I do want to note, we do see a lot of caregiving work in the women's space, but there are in the veteran space, according to the RAND study, it's actually heavier male caregivers than female. And so sometimes our language gets gendered, or we're just so used to it being a female spouse to a male service member or veteran. That is often not the case. And so being very mindful of that there are men doing this can be helpful in how you use that language again. So calling that out. Thank you, Al. I think this was so important to the discussion to add the notes about, male caregivers and guard and reserve being included. So thank you for your comments.
We do get calls from male caregivers looking for resources, and they complain about the bias, that they're not seen as somehow the same as anyone else that's doing caregiving, that somehow that's just associated with women. And so they have to struggle fighting for resources.
Well, I do want to tell you, we have a group completely dedicated to male caregivers. So at the Red Cross, there is a male caregiver group because we have also recognized that challenge and want to, again, provide support that's meaningful and relatable to all. So we do have a group for male caregivers.
Okay. That's really good to know. That's really good to know. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Al. So there's been a couple of comments in the chat, particularly around research. So Catherine is saying that she has recently started research in the veteran suicide prevention and caregiver experience. So that's exciting, Catherine. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about that. And similarly, Victoria as well. So would either of you like to share a little bit about your research? Victoria or Catherine? Oops, I'm sorry about the slides.
While they're coming off mute, I just have to thank our researchers. So I am a huge fan of research. I use my friend Dr. Roxana's all the time, the RAND report, but it really does help bring better, comprehensive, more impactful resources and really does inform the work that we do at Red Cross. So thank you so much to all of our researchers out there. The suicide prevention piece is very close to my heart. I'm serving on an advisory board specifically for firearm suicide prevention using understanding the caregiver's role there, as well as work with the National Action Alliance on Suicide Prevention. But again, understanding it from the caregiver perspective. Some other resources that might be helpful is VA Save. They recently did a caregiver suicide prevention training, which is free. You can look up VA Save. They have the suicide prevention training that is broad for veterans. And then they have a caregiver specific module, which you might see someone that in that video, but very close to my heart in understanding the nuances of suicide prevention, both for veterans and caregivers who unfortunately have their own suicidal ideation. And Dr. Roxana Delgado and her team had a wonderful, or not wonderful report, a scary report, I will say, that came out over the pandemic. So great to hear that there's more research in that area.
Hi, yeah, there's definitely, I think, increasing research in that area, although it's not, sorry, I have kind of a sore throat.
Oh.
Although it's not as widespread, I think, as, a lot of us would like it to be, just the actual, research that has been done on the caregiver experience. I know that I'm kind of jumping into a project that had to do with kind of discussion groups with caregivers. Related to kind of their experience and just a little bit focused on suicide prevention and, discussions that they have or have not had with their veteran related to suicide and especially firearm suicide prevention, which is just another thing that I'm working on is directly related to firearm suicide prevention. So it has to do with temporary transfers and safe storage in gun shops and kind of legislation behind that.
Amazing, Catherine. So needed. If there's ever anything I can do to support, or if you're looking for caregivers, if you have, outreach or recruitment information you'd like us to share, please know you have me as a resource to get that into our community, to hear from more caregivers who might be interested in sharing.
Great. I would love that. Because I think we are, there is still recruiting for groups ongoing.
Excellent. Yes, please let me help there.
Great. Thank you.
I'm,
Go ahead, Al.
I'm on the Lethal Means Subcommittee of the Connecticut Suicide Prevention Board. And I just got on the Senior Citizens and Suicide Prevention Committee. And it didn't dawn on me that, and I'm a family therapist, and in my role in providing services, I usually deal with the families where there's a death by a self-inflicted injury. Most of them are firearms. And it didn't dawn on me that, well, what is the research about caregivers in that area? What's the suicide rates among caregivers in that rate in Connecticut? So I'm going to look and see what research there is on that. If you could put a note in there about who's doing research on suicide and caregivers.
Well, Al, we have someone on this call with us right now who is a researcher who just released some findings. Roxana, do you want to just say hello?
Oh, that's Roxana? Okay.
Yes, hi. And that was about my comment of Catherine, and it's so important to look at the experience of the caregiver. But our study actually was looking at the health and well-being of caregivers and the suicidal ideation among caregivers. And one of the biggest findings is that those who reported having suicidal thoughts were those caring for veterans with behavioral health, and also including TBI, more than when they did the physical, support or
Okay.
ADLs. Our study, I'll post it. Our study is seminal. So when looking at suicidal prevention, ideation, and even suicide among caregivers, we did an exhaustive literature review and we couldn't find a lot. And there was actually nothing on military and veteran caregivers. So that's one of the motivators for us to looking into it. The other finding that is that out of a sample of almost 500 caregivers, almost 24% reported having planned or thought about suicide since becoming a caregiver. That was extremely high. The second highest would be in the population of caregivers caring for dementia in the civilian, but the general community caring for dementia, and it was 13%. So it was very high. We're continue to work on this. We did interviews, so we're in the process of analyzing those. But yeah, I'll be happy. I'll post the link so you'll have access to that publication.
That's gonna be very important for the committee I'm working on, because nobody has that information. And this is going to be a new committee working on senior issues.
Yeah, and there's really not much out there. So since we published, that's why I'm very grateful to SAMHSA in inviting me to be part of their doing some seminars and working with the mayors and governors challenge to really bring this to light. I have to say that Melissa Como was part of our advisory group for the research. Early stages in 2017, I reached out to her and she's just a gem. She's amazing. Professionally, personally, Melissa is just one of the most wonderful people you ever meet. So she's been very much working on this too. And I'm very grateful for her support in everything.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. Research is so important. We need the data to back up what we're trying to do, and it helps us also kind of get the support that we needed to rally around these issues. So thanks for all that you're doing there. All right, any other thoughts or questions that anyone wants to share before we wrap things up today? I'm so grateful to be able to have this time and space together. I really am. This has been a wonderful discussion. All right. Well, I'm hearing nothing. I think we'll go ahead and move forward in our agenda. And thanks, Melissa, so much for taking the time with us today and sharing all of the wealth of knowledge and resources that you have at your fingertips. And Dr. Delgado, thank you for joining us again for the second session. Glad we were able to connect you and Al together. So we're getting the word out about the important research that you're doing. All right, so for those of you who'd like to dive a little bit deeper, we have some homework. I put it in air quotes because it's not mandatory or not graded, but I do want to give you guys an opportunity to be able to look a little bit further. So take a look at that Hero Care resources that Melissa was telling you about today. Maybe look up your zip code and see what comes up to be able to share with those who are around you in your community. So I challenge each of you to take a minute to do that. Thanks, Dr. Delgado, for putting the link to your research in the chat. So that's there too. And next up, we have another great session planned for Thursday, February 9th. And in this particular session, we're going to be talking quite a bit about financial wellness as a really hot topic issue for caregivers. And we have with us Sean Moore. She's with Caregivers on the Home Front. She's also the program manager for financial wellness at the Elizabeth Dole Foundation. So we're excited to have her join us and share her experiences and resources around financial wellness as well. So hope you can join us then. And with that, I'm just going to give a big thanks to Melissa for joining us as our presenter, and then for all of our participants for coming and sharing your thoughts and ideas. This is a great group of people, so looking forward to connecting again next time in February.